Hey everybody, it's your boy John coming at you with another review, another surprise review. I keep telling everybody I'm reading the Fantastic Four Epic Collection, and then I keep getting distracted. I lost that Fantastic Four collection for a while, found it again, and just have been reading it slowly. And I picked this up at Half Price Books over the weekend. It was like 15 bucks. Usually has a cover price of $34.99, so pretty good. And I did bend this throwing it in my backpack today, which is annoying. I try to keep these in pretty good condition, but look what I did. Oh man, brutal. This is the Star Wars Legends New Republic. So for those who are whippersnappers and don't know what's going on with this whole deal and Star Wars and all that, Disney bought Star Wars and has this new Force Awakens thing, but there was like 20, 30 years of canon that was made in comics and books and video games that George Lucas did as like a future history, and it was phenomenal. If you haven't read the Thrawn books by Timothy Zahn, I reviewed his new book in the Disney universe, but his old books are so much better, it's unbelievable. And the reason I was actually interested in these is because Volume 4 of this epic collection, The New Republic, has a adaptation of those Thrawn books, which is scripted by Mike Barron, who's a great guy and a great scripter. And I'm interested in reading through to catch up to that. Now, it turns out that almost all of these collections are pretty unrelated, so I didn't really need to do that. Right here, we've got a mini-series of Marv Jade, who is she's like a Jedi power type of gal who's working for the Emperor toward the end of Jedi, and she comes into play later in that Thrawn series. That's where she debuted. We have a Shadows of the Empire Evolution. Now, Shadows of the Empire was a book/video game, and it was supposed to be this like multimedia property sort of deal, and that was where it came from. And this just takes place right afterwards, right after Jedi and all that, and reestablishes the Black Sun, which is like this like crime syndicate group that was established in that book. And then we've got a Boba Fett sort of deal and some more, which are pretty unrelated, just like random stories here. And so these are just one-offs, but we have two pretty long miniseries to start this thing. They do not really have too much to do with the Thrawn books, other than Marv Jade's existence, but pretty solid as it was. And so I actually plowed through this in one day. Pretty quick reads. A lot of these were pretty sparsely populated as far as like the word count goes in the word balloons, so pretty easy to read. And these were Dark Horse comics in the 90s. Dark Horse Comics had the license, and now Marvel's just reprinting these in these epic collections because it's basically free money for them. So let's get into the book. So this is the first series, and this is incidentally the best. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a webcomic. So there's a webcomic that starts out the Marv Jade series, and they just kind of go over the background. You'll notice that Timothy Zahn actually plotted this, and Michael Stackpole scripted it. Both of these are veteran Star Wars writers from the novels, and it shows here. So this was a very good webcomic. I was engaged instantly. Only 4 pages before we get into the actual comic itself, which is a Marv Jade comic. And this is drawn by Carlos Esquerza, something like that. Whose art's pretty decent. And again, plotter Timothy Zahn and scripter is Michael Stackpole. And we get this 5-issue or 6-issue series, about Marv Jade early on as she's like, trying to find her way post Emperor's death. And she goes through these little trials and has to fight people as she's, trying to figure out what to do. And it's really good. This was like super compelling. It was one of the better comics I've read. And actually, Timothy Zahn just starts writing it himself, once it gets to issue 4 here. And so it reads like Timothy Zahn, and that makes me happy because I'm loving his books. And this is a great character development story from Marv Jade. Since it's his character, he really knows her very well, and he can do a lot with her. He doesn't have to keep her stagnant or anything like that. And it's just fantastic, and I do really like this art. This is just classic comic art. Really good all the way around. Marv Jade goes through, and eventually there's a villain introduced in the beginning, or actually a friend in the beginning, and there's a twist at the end who she has to face, which makes it very fun. And she eventually does her thing, and goes through. So that was a 6-issue series. Great stuff. And then we get a couple of Star Wars tales. Like I said, these are pretty unrelated. They're like little vignettes about characters. We get another Marv Jade story. Again, Timothy Zahn wrote this, so you get some more background on this gal. Very good. Not as good as the miniseries because it's just a little short vignette, but still pretty solid. And then we get these like interior filler pages. I don't know why. Maybe it's the cover to Star Wars Tales without lettering. Who knows? I don't know why they did it like this and didn't just put the... Oh, I know why, because there was Dark Horse Comics logos all over it. So they didn't want to do that. Oh, Marvel Comics, you suck. And we get another Star Wars tale here. This one's not quite as good. It just had a Luke and Leia sort of element to it. And you see that the art in the Star Wars tales, they really didn't, like, you know, do well with it. So, but what's good about them is they're only usually 5-10 page stories. Another Star Wars Tales thing, and they go in, I guess, chronological order after Return of the Jedi. So you get this like future history that starts. These are eminently skippable, is what happens with these Star Wars Tales. Here's another one, a little Lando thing where there's some pew pew, little cartoony art compared to the other stuff. I don't mind that actually. It actually fits with Star Wars pretty well. But nothing compared to that Marv Jade series. That Marv Jade series was like, that's the reason I got so thick into this book and started reading it so fast, was that miniseries at the beginning was worth the price of admission by itself. I didn't know Timothy Zahn was writing for this at all. And then we get past those little vignettes and we get into this Shadows of the Empire story and get right back to this. And I was very excited because Steve Perry actually wrote the book Shadows of the Empire. So this continuation in comics is by the writer of Shadows of the Empire. And Steve Perry is very sparse with his dialogue in comics, and I like it because the pace really goes really well in this. I really like the artist. This one is probably the best in the entire book. I forget his name. Ron Randall. Yeah, Ron Randall, longtime Marvel guy, just did a lot of work for a lot of different companies, and I like the way he draws women. I like his detailed background, just very solid comic art. And this is about a gal who we eventually learn is a robot, and she was Prince Shizor's like bodyguard robot, and she is an assassin, and she wants to reprogram herself not to kill anymore because she doesn't like it. I just love the art; it makes me so happy. And like I said, it's so sparsely dialogued in this series that it just flows. Eventually, she has to be tracked down because the Black Sun wants to track her down. Prince Shizor's daughter, it wasn't daughter, it was niece, actually ends up taking up the mantle, trying to bring the Black Sun together. And then our New Republic, Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and all them get together. Lots of jokes about Han being a little playboy and Princess Leia being pissed about it through here. A little over the top on that, but most of them were pretty funny. And just solid, compelling character development for this robot and for this niece of Prince Shizor, who's pretty cool. So I would have liked to see a lot more of all of this. And unfortunately, the story ends. But once it ends, this is just like almost as good as the Timothy Zahn stuff, maybe even better in some ways, just because the art's a little better. But I very much enjoyed this volume. And very happy. And then we get into, like I said, more one-offs. Now this is about a couple guys who were trying to steal Jabba the Hutt's ship. They worked for him, and then they ended up having to deal with some security program on there, and come back. That's a different Hutt. That's not Jabba the Hutt because he's dead at this point. And this was a cute little story. Didn't really care about these characters going in, but it was well done. The art's a little rougher than the stuff we were seeing in the last big deal, but it was a fun storyline and pretty good. And then after this, we got a couple more tales of just Jabba's palace. This was a Star Wars tale. This was a one-off right here. This was a little better than the others, as it was about a girl who was part of a mining operation about to get assassinated because they wanted her company, and she teamed up with some of Jabba's former palace guards and made her way out and saved the day for everybody. So that was actually one of the better Star Wars tales in there, probably the best one. I enjoyed it. And then we get into these vignettes like that are kind of pointless, where we've got like a stormtrooper and a rebel who are trapped on Endor after the war, and then they send a signal to get out and all that, kind of a pointless deal. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it's just like it doesn't matter. No characters that matter. They'll never come back again. So it's like a little vignette, even though it's pretty long. And we have a Boba Fett. The Boba Fett story was a little disappointing. It was basically somebody's going around in Boba Fett's armor, and Boba Fett shows up. They thought he was dead, but he's not actually dead. From the Sarlacc pit in Jedi, he came back. Of course, he comes back. And kind of pointless. And then we just have a couple more pointless tales to round it out that I just was not thrilled with. And you see the art kind of becomes this like weird cartoony stuff at the end. Like they really didn't even try on these a lot. So, but yeah, those two miniseries with the Shadows of the Empire and with the Marv Jade deal made it completely worth it. And actually, that one Jabba's Palace one was pretty good too. You know, the vignettes in the Star Wars tales are what they are. I mean, they're just filler for the most part, so you can kind of skip them if you want. I would actually buy this. I think, you know, if you can find it at a discount or used or whatever, it's very much worth it for the two miniseries in here. Actually, at $34.95 is probably useful for the miniseries. Those were excellent. Some of the best comics I've read in a long time. Those are like 10 out of 10 comic books. And the vignette fillers were just fillers, so is what it is. That's the Star Wars New Republic. That's how it starts. I noticed the next volume is Rogue Squadron, and Rogue Squadron was a novel series also. I wonder if it's a faithful adaptation or if it's different stories. I guess we're going to find out when I get to reading that. I read a lot of these back in the day, the novels, and they were pretty great. So I enjoyed them. It's very sad that Disney didn't go with the continuity here because this continuity is so superior to the movies. It's great. I don't know if I'd recommend starting here. I would read the Thrawn stuff first and then read the Marv Jade comic. And I would read Shadows of the Empire, the actual book first, and then read the continuation here, because those characters will not be as impactful without those two series. Now, if you just want to read the comic, like I said, Volume 4 of the New Republic has the Thrawn Trilogy. It starts with a book called Heir to the Empire, and it's done as each book was done as a miniseries. You can start there, and then probably roll back to here, and that would actually help you pretty good. Shadows of the Empire, I don't know if there's a comic of that. I'll have to look that up. If you know of a comic of that, leave it in the comments. Help everybody out here. But it is worth the read, and like I said, after those books, I'd give this like a solid 8 out of 10 for reading, because I did finish it in one day. So it was paced very well. It was a lot of fun. It's all I can ask for out of comic books. All right, guys, I will see you soon, and I hopefully will actually review Fantastic Four next time. I've only got 3 issues left to read of that, so I'd better, right? All right, we'll see you soon. Bye.